Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating psychology and honestly, the pretty cutthroat marketing mechanics behind those notifications constantly buzzing in our pockets. Every single day, our screens light up, right? Nudging us to play a game, buy a product, or just look. But there is a deep, highly calculated science behind every single one of those little alerts. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it all works.
Let's kick things off with a question we have all faced at some point. What exactly makes that little buzz on our phone so utterly impossible to ignore? I mean, think about it. You could be in the middle of a really deep conversation or completely zeroed in on a tough task, but the moment that phone vibrates, it's like a tiny part of your brain just demands that you check it. To understand why we're so powerless against it, we've got to look at the psychology of conditioning.
It really all comes down to what Yuval AI calls the digital Pavlov. You might remember from psychology class, decades ago, Ivan Pavlov famously conditioned dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell just by associating it with food. While today, our smartphones and digital platforms are literally designed to exploit those exact same principles of conditioning. We are essentially the modern subjects of this experiment. But instead of a bell, it's a notification chime, and instead of food, it's digital validation.
And it forms this beautifully engineered three-step psychological loop. Step 1 is the stimulus, the sudden ping, the vibration, or the screen lighting up. Step 2 is anticipation. That split second of intense curiosity as you reach for your phone, wondering who messaged you or what you just won. And finally, step 3 is the reward. A message, a breaking news update, or maybe newly refilled lives in your favorite game. This exact loop triggers a dopamine release in your brain, quite literally training us to crave the next interruption.
But, why go to such psychological extremes in the first place? Well, it all comes down to the brutal economics of the mobile app market. Take the mobile gaming industry, for example. The cost to acquire just one single new user is a staggering $2 to $5 per install. $2 to $5. Developers are absolutely bleeding money just to get their little icon onto your home screen. And that high cost of acquisition, it is colliding head-on with a massive retention crisis. Listen to this harsh reality. Only a dismal 2 to 3% of users actually stick around after 30 days. Just let that sink in. Imagine paying up to $5 for a customer, only to have a 97% chance they're going to abandon you within a month. Without a foolproof way to consistently draw users back in, developers would just go bankrupt.
Which brings us to the solution: engineering the perfect nudge.
To combat this massive retention crisis, marketers have to engineer the absolute perfect push notification, one that pulls you back in without annoying you so much that you just delete the app entirely. The very first rule of crafting this delicate little message: brevity. The golden rule is keeping the text under 40 characters. Why? Because when a user gets a notification, they are usually just quickly scanning their lock screen. Marketers have to treat that push notification like a billboard you're zooming past at 60 miles per hour. It has to be punchy and it has to be immediately valuable.
And hey, the visuals matter just as much as the words. Research from Leanplum found that simply adding an emoji to a push notification can boost open rates by a staggering 254%. It's a tiny visual cue, but it makes the message pop on a super crowded lock screen. Emojis instantly express emotion, all while saving that highly valuable character space we just talked about.
But developers have to tread incredibly carefully here. Use emojis only when they make sense, avoid going overboard, and do your research. The emojis absolutely must match the brand's voice and, crucially, the user's cultural context. For instance, did you know that an innocent thumbs-up emoji is actually considered a highly offensive insult in parts of the Middle East? Yeah, a marketer trying to send a cheerful nudge could accidentally alienate an entire region of players if they ignore localized cultural nuances. So keeping that brand voice consistent and culturally aware is huge.
Now, moving beyond the visuals, the actual content of the message has to feel completely tailored to you. One single data reveals something wild. Personalized push notifications yield a massive 344% higher engagement rate than generic ones. We all have zero tolerance for spam these days, right? But if an app speaks directly to your specific behavior, your location, or your in-app progress, you are highly, highly likely to click.
Let's look at how this personalization actually works in practice. Imagine getting a boring generic blast that just says, "Come back and play." You'd ignore it instantly. But what if you get this? "John, your championship title is at risk. Defend your top spot in 30 minutes. Look at the difference. It uses your name, references a specific achievement, and creates this sudden, compelling urgency. Which one is actually making you pick up your phone? Definitely the second one.
And this engineering goes even deeper than just the text.
Developers literally have to tailor these messages based on your specific phone's operating system. A strategy that works perfectly on an iPhone might completely flop on a Samsung. iOS has traditionally had very strict data limits, which kind of forces text-heavy alerts. But Android allows for rich media. That means marketers can push vibrant, full-color images straight to your notification tray just to capture your attention.
Okay, moving on to timing and delivery secrets. We've covered the what, but we really need to talk about the when. Because here is the absolute truth. Even the most personalized, beautiful, emoji-filled message is going to lead to user churn if it interrupts your sleep at 3 a.m. Timing is everything. Data from Notix and Business of Apps shows that we are highly receptive at very specific times. Specifically, Tuesday and Sunday evenings between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. boast the highest reaction rates. I mean, think about it. You're likely sitting on the couch, watching TV, phone in hand, just perfectly primed for a distraction.
But the smartest apps? They don't just rely on general averages. They adjust for user time zones, base frequency on how often you actually use the app, and leverage A/B testing to find your optimal timing. They even segment you based on whether you're an active or dormant user. It gets even more strategic than that. They anticipate real-world habits, like Domino's perfectly timing a pizza nudge right before a major basketball game starts, or the app Cellapark messaging you just as their data predicts you are arriving in a busy city looking for parking. That is next-level behavioral targeting.
So let's look at some real-world winning examples. Let's ground all this theory by looking at how some of the most popular gaming apps out there execute these exact strategies every single day to ensure we keep coming back. First up is Wordscapes. They brilliantly utilize the concept of the daily routine, tying their game to an appointment with the daily puzzle. Even smarter, they analyze player data to figure out exactly when someone is stuck on a level and about to quit in frustration. Right at that critical moment, they send an alert offering a free hint, pulling the player right back in for the reward. Meanwhile, heavy hitters like Candy Crush and Clash of Clans tap perfectly into anticipation and reward. They don't just send random, annoying alerts. No, they ping you the exact second your lives are refilled or your digital upgrades are complete. It creates this really powerful sense of contextual urgency. Your brain knows the reward is ready right now, and that fear of wasting time by not claiming it, that's what compels you to open the app. Then you have Pokémon Go, which takes the stimulus entirely into the physical world. They use geolocation targeting to trigger alerts based on exactly where you are standing. It's one thing to get a generic game alert, but it is an entirely different level of psychological pull when your phone pings to tell you a rare reward is hiding just a few blocks down the actual street you were walking on. It bridges those digital and physical reward loops seamlessly.
And then you have completely out-of-the-box approaches. Some games, like Simon's Circles, literally mock you in their notifications. They use humor and gamification, sometimes pretending to be a quote-unquote rogue developer taunting your low score, just to goad you into reopening the app to prove them wrong. It attacks your competitive ego. And surprisingly, it is incredibly effective at driving re-engagement.
So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want you to ask yourself a pretty provocative question. The very next time you hear that familiar ping, are you truly in control of your decision to check your screen? Or are you just a participant in a perfectly engineered loop waiting for your next digital reward? Understanding the mechanics behind the screen is the very first step in reclaiming your attention. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and stay curious.